Hello and welcome here in La Talking Venture Capital TV. My name is Javier and I'll be your host for today. And joining me are a very interesting group of very knowledgeable people who will be talking about a very interesting topic today. It is about development and investment in developing countries. So, to start with, I would like first to mention to our viewers that you can always visit our feature shows at latucking.com/DCTV/shows where you get updated of all the latest trends. And with us, I would like to welcome our speakers, Anuj, David, Alex. Gentlemen, welcome. I would
You.
like to ask a brief introduction from each of you, please. Who would like to go first? Anuj, are you fine? Can you go first?
Oh, absolutely. So great seeing you, Javier. Of course, we miss Kyle, but yeah, you're aside for us, all right? So pleasure seeing you again. Really quick introduction. My name is Anuj. I'm the founder of Yellow Sapphire Technologies, or YS Tech for short. We are based out of India and are primarily into software business. At present, we are working on starting up an alternate investment fund that will be investing exclusively into blockchain and into technologies of the future. Other than that, at YS Tech, we work primarily on upcoming technologies like Internet of Everything, which are based out of blockchain. Other than that, I've started three startups in the last 10 years. Most recent one was an app called Skiwi. So been working on Yellow Sapphire ever since my exit from that. I'm also an international partner at World Business Angel Forum. Other than that, I make angel investments with iAngel based out of Israel.
Thank you, Anuj, for that introduction. David, would you like to go next, please?
Sure. Thank you very much, Javier. I'm David Towell. I'm the president and a co-founder of ProChain Capital. ProChain is a multi-strategy crypto hedge fund. We invest in cryptocurrencies. We invest in equities, public companies, both long and short, that are involved in the fintech, blockchain, crypto space. In addition, we also invest in private seed and venture stage companies that are developing in the ecosystem.
Thank you, David, for that. Nicole, it's a pleasure to have you here. Could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you. It's a delight to be with you all today. I am wishing you a good morning from California. I, like my colleagues on this panel, wear a couple of different hats. I have a firm called Outfront Solutions, and at Outfront Solutions, we're doing business and marketing consulting. And a lot of times representing both funds and entrepreneurs. In fact, last week we announced Griffin Gaming Partners, which is a $1 billion fund, and they're investing in a lot of Web3 gaming opportunities. The other hat that I wear, in addition to Outfront Solutions, is that I am a LP and founding advisor to How Women Invest. And How Women Invest is focused on investing in female-founded teams. And we're currently underway on Fund 2 and making a number of investments across the female entrepreneur landscape. So, good morning.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Nicole. Alex, could you go next, please?
Sure, it's a pleasure. Thanks, Javier, for having me. My name is Alex Nascimento. I started in the industry by co-founding the UCLA Blockchain Lab, where I teach and focus on security tokens and institutionalization of crypto. And that evolved into our firm, 7CC, which is focused on blockchain investments. We are very focused on the LATAM market, currently doing a lot of work with real asset-backed tokens, both on credit opportunities and tokenization of farm and agricultural projects.
Thank you very much for that, Alex. And now let's jump on the topic that we have at hand, investment startups from developing countries. I think we can agree on the potential that developing countries have. Just for an example, today, the Financial Express mentioned that in India alone, there are recognized 39,000 active startups, in which out of those, a little bit over 15 startups have been recognized under the Startup India program recently. 13 of them have reporting being created over 1 million jobs. So obviously there is a big impact on this. But let's see it from the investor's point of view. What's the difference between investing in a startup from you could call it a first world country versus a developing country? Who would like to take this?
I'll take a shot first.
Please.
So this is David Towell. My firm has had a particular focus on Argentina. And so this is where those ideas are coming from. But generally, with respect to investing in those types of countries, there's usually not a lot of parameters. And that kind of cuts both ways, legal and regulatory parameters. So sometimes you're inventing the law. And if somebody or some lawyer or some regulator thinks you're going outside the lines, all of a sudden you find yourself in, unknown territory because frankly, they're drawing the lines as they're working with you. Another thing is, as an investor, you have to realize that the pool of available capital is also much smaller. There are only a finite number of investors that will look at that country because of geopolitical risk, currency risk, and so forth. And so therefore, again, that's a double-edged sword. It provides you, with a much more exclusive playing field. But at the same time, if you want a monetization event, it's unlikely that you're going to find as many interesting suitors for the business later on, than that. The other thing, I'd say the last thing is a lot of firms, at least I've found, have very big sights on moving their projects very quickly from the developing world to the developed world. And I think a lot of them don't understand how different it is to go ahead and be the big fish, let's call it, in something like the United States or Western Europe, as opposed to being the big fish in, call it the Southern Cone or LATAM. I think it's different. And I don't think founders understand that because they live in the country they live in. They don't operate, in North America, let's say.
Thank you, David. I think when we spoke previously, you mentioned a big startup in Latin America called Mercado Libre, right?
Yeah, that's definitely not a startup.
Yeah.
It may once upon a time it may have been, but it's certainly not a startup anymore. I mean, it's an incredibly large public company. But out of Mercado Libre, there have been a number of startups that have spun out of there, or either were the brainchilds of people that worked there who then left.
Yeah. I'm just saying startup because I remember probably 8 years ago. It was the first time I heard about Mercado Libre. Yeah, but at that time probably it was a startup, but they did pretty well. Who else would like to participate in this? What is the difference between really an investment in a first world country versus developing country?
So let me take a shot at this, and let me just share some examples, some real numbers here to make things interesting, Javier. So
Please do.
when you're looking at a first world country like US, Germany, Canada, Australia,
Mm-hmm.
the market have matured so much, and since it's reached a point where there is so much consolidation, even with a healthy competition, you're not seeing a lot of I would say risky investments. Even if I'm making a stock market returns, I'm mostly expecting a return of 12-14% out of S&P, which is fine in a way. But since the economy isn't growing at that same pace as a developing economy, say India, China, or rest of the Southeast Asian countries, you're not seeing those bigger numbers come in. Comparatively, take India as an example. We had been growing at a steady pace, and yeah, we were pumping out unicorns every now and then at the start of last decade, which steadily grew from 1 to 2 per year to probably 2 or 3 or 4 per year. But that exponentially picked up as the market matured, as people, or as I would say consumers who had typically been more attracted towards safer investments like gold or fixed deposits tried to realize the potential with more foreign investors coming in. that could actually pump in their cash as well and then grow it at a much faster pace, you're seeing a huge influx of cash, and that is causing a much more spending power in that consumer, which is again causing that cycling effect that since consumers are spending more, they are making more, and it just keeps on growing and growing and growing. Last year we had roughly 38 odd unicorns, 38 or 40 odd unicorns. Just this year of 2022, I believe we have already given out roughly 12 odd unicorns. That's unprecedented number for an economy like India. So if you're making investments, even not very high risk investments, but into mutual funds, you're still seeing returns as high as 20-24%. So
Mhm.
you're seeing an audience which is getting more risk taking, which is since they are seeing bigger numbers, are willing to write bigger checks. And as that confidence builds up, that number is only going to grow bigger until, of course, it reaches that plateau where the number starts going down again, the interest rate starts going down again. But yeah, until that point in time, it's a gold rush.
Anuj, do you think that, let's call it first world investors, see startups in developing country as something riskier?
There is there is this quote from Peter Thiel. He said that an investor can sell their stocks for n number of reasons, but there's only one reason they buy a company's share. That's because they believe it's going to grow. And just by the sheer number of investors who are pouring money into India right now, I think it's pretty evident that they are seeing that, yeah, they are slightly higher risk investments, but the market has matured to that level where the consumers are more actively adopting new products and then are shifting their way of living, are moving to a better standard of living. I think that's giving them confidence to keep pumping in more and more.
I totally agree with that. One of the big unicorns, I actually had a chance to interview Chingari. They had a
Oh,
big
yeah.
team. I think that's one of the largest ones.
I know their founders, fantastic guy, and it's truly amazing to see the growth trajectory they had. They practically just came out of nowhere after the TikTok ban in India and have acquired a majority share in the Indian market. So really fantastic job by them.
Definitely, definitely. Really, really impressive to talk with him. Nicole, why do you think it is that people will be attracted to invest in startups in developing countries?
Well, one thing that's really prevalent that I've seen after working with a number of funds and entrepreneurs in Turkey, and helping to really participate in developing that ecosystem, as well as Mexico, are two good examples of the universities are turning out engineers in much greater numbers than, we're having this major talent crisis in the United States, for example, and you have a much greater, range of talent. And like, for example, in the market in Turkey, um, I was participating in some of the very first big investments in Turkey. One was Peak Games, which maybe you noticed last year had a $1.8 billion exit to Zynga. And that really bolstered the entire gaming ecosystem. Another one was trendyall.com, which got investment about 12 years ago from Tiger Global, Kleiner Perkins. And in working with them, we really had to tell the story of why Turkey. Why did it make sense to invest in Turkey? And, we're showing that, the economic indicators, the growth online, all these different factors. And now today you look at Trendyall and it's a decacorn. So you've got some really, big numbers, and the talent continues to grow with the exits. And, it's really, become an incredible ecosystem. Already at the beginning of this year, Turkey has turned out, has received more investment in the first 2 months of this year than it has in any other year in the past.
Wow.
That's just in the first 2 months. So a lot of growth there. The same is in Mexico. working with a company in corporate development and M&A called NDS Cognitive Labs, and they have a database of 20,000 technical workers. And
Mhm.
in the end, that really can make such a huge difference on the ability to scale and grow. So I think that's a big factor.
Oh, great. Great to hear that from Turkey. I wasn't aware of that. Alex, it's also good that you mentioned you have different parts in Latin America. What's your view on it? Do you think Latin America is one of these we could call it developing places where we'll have a lot of startups?
For certain, right? So a lot of what happens in developing nations historically is that they are becoming more globalized. So you're having local startups that mirror successful startups in developing countries. The example that David gave is a great one. Mercado Libre is a mirror of Amazon in Latin America, and during COVID, that did a great job of growing its market share across Latin America, although it's not a startup, but just as an example. So we're seeing some of these larger platforms in Latin America starting to offer crypto on their platform, including Mercado Libre, including the competitor to Uber, 99 Pay or 99 or previously called 99 Taxi. So we're going to see Latin America become a massive crypto adopter. North of like 300 million users are expected to hold some kind of crypto in the next year or so. And we're very bullish on that. And our focus is providing those new entrants to crypto with tokens that are asset backed by either traditional finance products or agricultural products such as industrial farms.
Great. Oh, thank you for that. Another question, an interesting question is why or what is it depending on that one developed country can perform better in regards to the raise of startups versus another? Um, Example, India is one of the top there out there, but we have also several ones which are not up. Mexico. In Mexico, we can't really put it in comparison to India up there. It might in the future, but not yet. What can be that due to? Is it just the government's pushing more startups? It is that university are coming up with more IT developers possible.
So, sorry, you broke down a little bit. The question is how, like,
What is it depending on that one country can perform better in having more startups than another?
well, I
I,
think
I
there's
can
two
jump
things,
also
right?
in that one, guys, if you like. And so sorry, because I have joined later. I'm Eduardo.
Hello,
But
Eduardo.
feel free, Alex. I mean, go on, Alex, and I will go right after you.
Okay, Alex, you can go ahead.
Sure. So I think it's dependent on a couple of things, right? It's dependent on the local talent and how many engineers or specialized talent force you can get on that region. It's dependent on the interest rates that are available on that region. Higher interest rates, people tend to not put their money at risk, right, and tend to not invest in startups. And then it's dependent on tech adoption. So I think that if you sum those three together, you probably can get an equation that will makes more sense of why some countries have more startups than others. Greatly in the US, you have low interest rates, incredible talent, and available tech adoption. So that's where the money is. Example, California.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex, for that. Eduardo, are you here with us?
Yeah, fully agree. I think that one of the main issues that we've been, encountering when it comes to invest in developing countries startups is a combination of a global access to capital markets, okay, government promotion of startups and different initiatives aimed at actively promoting those young entrepreneurs that are willing to achieve their goals and to develop their projects actually on a global basis usually, and also the ability to have access to a good pool of talent. I mean, some of the countries that you mentioned, for example, India is quite strong in IT profiles when compared to other regions of the world which are more oriented towards, for example, digital marketing. Okay, actually, as part of a family office that we run on a global basis, and different businesses in which we are invested, mainly I would say in the deep tech space. Okay, AI, blockchain, big data, machine learning, robotics, IoT, quantum, that kind of things. Now, metaverse and NFTs. What we have seen is that, for example, when you go to Latam, which, by the way, I fully agree with you that it has a tremendous potential when it comes to the adoption of digital currencies, particularly because we are talking about countries that cash is still quite largely used when compared to other regions of the world. Actually, um, definitely, that combination will make much more feasible to decide in which country to invest and which startups to promote on a global basis when compared to other regions in which you don't really have that government support, that access to a good source and pool of talent. I'm not talking about universities because you also can source, a number of digital nomads and people which is not enrolled at university, which are as good as those university students, to be honest. And then, of course, the possibilities that you have to expand operations on a global basis and to take that technology from that country to another one without having any problems with the government, such as in some cases of Asian countries.
Wait, did Javier drop off? I
I
I
think
think
we
he's having
lost
some.
our
I think
host.
that Javier, I think that Javier dropped out. Yeah,
Well,
So
so we can jump into the next one, Anouk. Let's keep
well,
things rolling.
hey,
absolutely.
uh, surprise, surprise, right? Uh, but hey, I mean, just taking this moment while Javier is back. Oh, geez, you're back too early, Javier. I was gonna take
Sorry.
over.
Yep.
We
I was
got you
planning.
back, Javier. By the way, are you based in Spain, Javier?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. Please do. Please do. Sorry, something happened.
Hey, no worries, mate. So I was
No,
just.
I'm based in Budapest, Hungary.
Okay, but you look like a Spaniard, right? Such as
But
myself.
I am. Go ahead, Anuj.
Oh, nothing. I was actually.
Yes, indeed.
I was
Yes,
thinking
indeed.
of
Yes.
a few
Yes,
changes that
Eduardo.
are coming
Yes,
into the
yes, I
market,
am.
right?
I do
So
speak Spanish also. Sorry, Anuj, please go ahead.
oh, I'm so sorry, Javier. I think there's some lag on your end. But yeah, no, I was just thinking about all the changes that are coming in the industry as a whole. I mean, just before the start of the session, we were talking about how we are seeing an inflow of most of the blockchain companies into Dubai, into Middle East. Uh, Simultaneously, they're moving very heavily towards Europe and Switzerland, albeit keeping all of their talent pool remote. So yeah, it's just an interesting factor, and I wanted to know what others think about it. David, what do you think?
Can you give me a little bit more specificity?
So take for example companies like Polygon. They started off in India, but they are now practically moving most of their business operations to Middle East, to Dubai, along with other major blockchain companies or upcoming blockchain technology companies that are just incorporating in Dubai from day one itself. Now, I won't really call Dubai a developing nation, yes, sure, they have a huge per capita income. But it's interesting to see how even from companies like, or even from countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, you're seeing talent move towards that region while keeping all the resources based out of their home country.
So, look, we have that in the United States as well, where a lot of funds are based here, but they are incorporated offshore. They're incorporated in the British Virgin Islands, a lot of them, some in Barbados. And I think it's because the resources that our government here has allowed for, this is just for trading, right? Sales and trading on crypto assets. It's much more constrained in terms of what's offered here. Obviously, FTX and Binance have much more limited scope in the United States than they do elsewhere in the world. So I think that is, it makes sense in terms of having intellectual capital remaining in the country. So, for instance, Argentina, their intellectual capital is all in the country. In terms of where all of the startups are based, not one of them is incorporated in Argentina for a lot of reasons, including currency issues. So they raise all their money in dollars, and they're all incorporated in Delaware, and that's where they go ahead and get their capital pledged. So, I think that, it's unfortunately, you have to figure out the best solution, the best mousetrap, to the problem that you've got in terms of where's your talent, where's your capital, where are the laws most efficient for purposes of regulation and maybe for purposes of taxes as well. And so it ends up being a mishmash of things. So it makes sense that there is always, flight of one thing or another, outside of any particular country.
And
Yeah,
Nicole,
and where to that point,
I wanted to ask you actually, since you
yeah.
work with a lot of companies in international business expansion, what's your thought on how should an early stage startup that's actually doing this from a developing nation, how should they approach this where they incorporate in a developing world, like David said, as a Delaware C Corp or probably in British Virgin Island? How should they approach this situation?
Yeah, I mean that having to spread your operations in these different functions is it's a matter of compliance, right? And and in the geopolitical situation, you may need to diversify, um, how you're setting up your company for safety purposes and longevity. I'm actually working on a lot of crisis communications right now with a Ukrainian company who, had the majority of their talent in the Ukraine, hopefully getting most team members safely to Poland, but with martial law, not so easy with the majority of the men that work for the company. But really, having this diversity across different regions is important. It's not always easy to do for a startup. And so in a way, I think it's really important to work with investors rather, and entrepreneurs like yourselves, right? Each one of you on the panel, you have a much more global understanding of maybe where talent can come from. Where do you need to set up your compliance and your banking? So having strategic investors that can guide you and mentor you in building out your business is really, really important. Because it may be more favorable to get, to have investors from Dubai and the MENA region, and then also, set up your banking in the Caymans, for example. And then, a lot of entrepreneurs have stars in their eyes and they think that they can go to market in the US. And, that always takes a very strategic and focused effort to do so in a successful way. Typically, the best way to go about that is via partnerships, right? If you're leveraging technologies with these different tech giants, a lot of times there's a way in to hitch your wagon onto, another's star. And it may not be just the giants, it could be kind of the tier two players almost, right? With the database companies or what have you. But those are just some thoughts. Strategic investors and really knowledgeable people about the global landscape is critical for startups.
Got it. Thank you so much. That's such a valuable input. Speaking of that, I mean, since you mentioned that this is important from investors and entrepreneurial point of view, Alex, what do you think? I mean, you have written a best-selling book, right? You are investing in blockchain companies. How how do you look at a company that's approaching you with the similar scenario where either the founders or the company itself or the talent pool itself is probably from a developing region with not so much access to resource pool, but they are registered as a Delaware C corp, is and then vice versa as well, where a company based out of US has the founders in US, but they are hiring globally in probably US, in Vietnam, in Singapore. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, so that's a very good point, because I think that the nature of blockchain investments is very decentralized, not to hammer on the popular buzzword, right? But so we've done investments across the globe. I think that if we're presented a company that is a Delaware company, I would be much more prone to make an investment there because there is rule of law. We're
Mhm.
currently in a few liability issues with different token companies that went to zero, and because they are in markets that there's probably no rule of law or a significant challenge to go pursue that from a legal standpoint of view, we just lost the money. So I think that for new companies out there, for people that are trying to push their projects, if you can make your project or your company most friendly to international investors by either doing it in Delaware or other more friendly markets for international trades, then I think you're better off as a founder.
Got it. Any advice, any point you want to give to founders when they are setting up such a global operation by registering in a separate country and
Well, I think that, aside from being American, I think that obviously you see more venture money coming through um, American channels.
Mhm.
So if it is a possibility for founders out there, I would highly recommend the Delaware infrastructure,
Got it.
because it has tax benefits for non-US residents, and it
Mhm.
makes US investors very comfortable of where they're putting their money, right?
Got it.
Even places like Singapore has many challenges into trying to recoup your invested dollars.
Got it. That's awesome. Thank you so much
Well,
for that input.
actually, following on that one, actually, I would like to add, Alex. I personally recommend. I mean, definitely a Delaware structure is great, actually, but you have the same benefits if you are also based in Florida or New Mexico. But for example, in our particular case, being based in Florida, okay, which you have exactly the same benefits as Delaware, will allow us to benefit from a much better, entrepreneurship environment, actually, because there's many people living there, actually, and to have a much better access to logistics when compared to Delaware. This is our personal opinion, okay, my personal opinion, after having had structures in both regions. It's much easier to carry on, and to start global operations on for startups if you are based in Florida, actually, and without having to reject those benefits that you could get also in Delaware and in other regions within the US. And of course, fully agree with you that Singapore also provides a number of different benefits. And when it comes to Europe, I will pick up, Malta probably as the best choice. Malta, Gibraltar, I will say.
Got it. Thank you so much on that, Eduardo. I think with that being said, since Javier is having some trouble with this internet, how about we bring the session to a close? So let's start off with a quick round of closing thoughts. So Eduardo, do you want to go on this first? Or what's any closing thoughts and where can people find you online?
Yeah, actually, guys, I mean, again, anyone who has attended, feel free to be in touch with me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Eduardo Garcia de Palomo. Okay, very happy to help any entrepreneurs and founders to either develop their businesses on a global basis and to mentor them if they like. Okay, and basically, to summarize, I will say that, of course, I mean, there has been a tremendous interest in an increasing interest, actually, for startups in developing countries, because we do believe that there's much more than the US and Europe when it comes to young talent and interesting and exciting projects on a global basis. And as a recommendation, I will let them know, all those founders and entrepreneurs living in those countries, India, Africa, also Asia, that if they have access, if they continue with a proper networking, and if they are present in events, in bid competitions, to make people aware that they are there, actually, they will definitely get the funds needed to develop their projects and to make them global. So basically, I will say that keep going, guys. Keep pushing, because in this digital world, everyone has the opportunity to develop any kind of projects and to find any funding through crowdfunding, or maybe a straight equity raise, maybe also convertible notes. I mean, there are many different options, actually, if they do find the
Absolutely.
right people. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Nicole, any closing thoughts from you, and where can people find you online?
Well, just that the closing thought is that, it can feel like an absolute up to tell the story of your country. Why does it make sense to invest in your region? And so I encourage entrepreneurs to partner with local government organizations who can help tell the story, provide the facts and figures, because a lot of potential investors and or employees may not understand the benefits of working with or investing in a country, in a specific region. And so when, for example, I was working with companies and funds in Turkey, I told the story of why Turkey. What's happening with the talent there? What's happening with the economy? That makes sense. Doing the same with, India's cognitive labs, and why Mexico. So, and I even did the same with Germany, to tell the story of true innovation coming out of Germany years and years ago. People didn't think there was innovation coming out. It was all copycat businesses, was the perception. So it's really important to educate the market, right, on why your region is important, and what's going on there. And so to stay in touch with me,
I
I'd love to stay in
think
touch with,
Nicole is
investors,
having some.
entrepreneurs, and it's best to find me on my website. It's outfront.solutions, no .com, just outfront.solutions, or on LinkedIn. Happy to carry
Thank you
on the
so much, Nicole.
conversation.
Thank you so much, Nicole. So, Alex, moving on to you. Any closing thoughts, and where can people find you online?
Yeah, happy to continue the conversation online. You can find me on LinkedIn, Alex Nascimento, UCLA, the black and white picture there, or you can follow us on Instagram, 7cc Invest. Happy to chat about investments in LATAM and in the metaverse.
Thank you so much, Alex. And David, finally moving on to you. Any closing thoughts, and where can people find you online?
Yeah, closing thoughts is that valuations are through the roof right now. I think inappropriately so in the private markets. I think the public markets are cheaper than the private markets right now. I don't know when all that dry powder is going to get used and spent, and therefore valuations in the private sphere are going to come down. If you're a seller in the private markets, or if you're fundraising, it's a phenomenal time. If you're an investor, you really have to tread very carefully. People are paying for metrics that frankly don't, I think, translate to cash flow ever. I think that is a really risky proposition in light of the fact that, we're in a very much global marketplace, and there are lots of people doing exactly the same thing in different corners of the world. In terms of finding me, LinkedIn is fine, as well as on Twitter, David D. Towell. Happy to address any comments there.
Thank you so much, David. And thank you so much to all our viewers. You can find me online as well on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Otherwise, you can always go on our website, yellowsapphiretech.com or ystech.io. Always happy to continue our chat. If you reach out to me or to any of our founders, please do mention where you found us and then what's the context for the conversation. To everyone else, thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day and stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anuj.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you. Have a fantastic day, guys. Let's keep in
Bye-bye.
touch.
Bye-bye, Eduardo. See you guys.
Bye-bye.